Well, welcome everyone to the very first Questions Experience podcast. My name is Randy Lennon, and wow, have we got a killer start to our series with our guest today, Ven Virah. And Ven is international speaker. He's spoken all over the world, corporate guy, leader, spiritual guy, and you're not going to believe what you're going to find out right now about Ven Virah on the Questions Experience podcast. So here we go. Ven Virah, welcome to the Questions Experience podcast. And what the heck is this all about? That ED guy is your new brand?
That's correct, Randy. First, thank you so much for having me on that Questions Experience podcast. I'm so happy to be here. And yes, recently I've launched That ED Guy, which is pretty much my story, because sometimes we think, what is our story? What should we share with the world? But in fact, in my case, the story found me. And That ED Guy is about my journey overcoming erectile dysfunction. And the reason—
Oh my goodness, I can't believe you just said that. Erectile dysfunction is what That ED Guy is about.
Correct. Yeah, it's not about education. It is about education, but essentially, it's about my journey, my experience, the rise and fall of erectile dysfunction, and it's very important.
The first of many double entendres in this interview, by the sounds of it. Hey, we're making light of it right off the bat, because I mean, it's actually it takes you back. I've never interviewed anybody about erectile dysfunction, and I've done thousands of interviews. So this is a very serious part of your story, though, isn't it?
It is. And we say serious, but we also have to remember that when we actually get to chuckle about it, we actually normalize it. And when we can normalize it, then we can talk about it, remove all the seriousness around it, and really have a conversation about what is erectile dysfunction, who is affected by this, because we have to remember it's not just about men, it's about men and women, because this is about, whether it's sexual intercourse, erectile dysfunction, but also overcoming shame and guilt, which is such a big topic to discuss, because when people feel in that vibration of guilt and shame, then it's very difficult to be able to lead a life of love and happiness and joy and really feel that fulfillment. So to be able to rise that up, whether it's just rising that erectile dysfunction, but also rising the energy, the vibration, and really creating that happiness around is so important. And that's what's important for me. Now, Randy, looking at my story in more details, I was someone that was very popular. I was the student council president. People knew me. Like, I would walk in Montreal, and every corner people would be like, "Hey Van, how's it going? Hey Brown Sugar, what's going on today? Where's the party tonight?" And I had that lifestyle, but what they didn't know what was going on the inside, which was very crumbling, very challenging and difficult. It was my deep dark secret that nobody knew about, not even my family, not even my friends. Nobody knew that I was going through that. What they saw on the outside was this happy-go-lucky guy that was just full of life, full of expression. People would come up to me and say, "Hey Van, I wish I had your life." But they didn't know what was going on the inside.
Now, erectile dysfunction, we do talk about it. I mean, there's been Viagra commercials like for 20 years all over TV. And that's about the extent of it. This is for old guys like me. Like, isn't it? Like, my impression was erectile dysfunction is, you get older and, you need the Viagra. That's not the case, though, is it?
No. And in fact, more and more men are facing this issue, whether it's a physical injury because of pornography or for whatever reasons are out there that is causing that anxiety, the performance anxiety. And I recently stumbled upon a study from Yale study which said that 1 out of 4 men under the age of 40 is dealing with erectile dysfunction. And
wow.
It's crazy. And I believe that the stats are even more, because a lot of men are not even talking about that issue while they're even facing that issue. So this is something that is so taboo in our society, but yet needs to have that platform for conversation. So I want to be that advocate. I've gone through that erectile dysfunction. I've overcome that erectile dysfunction from a physical level, but also from a mental level. And I was able to move on and have this second chance to life, this beautiful chance to life that I would like for men to be able to experience, whether it's dealing with this physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. There are many facets to human beings, and it's important to recognize them, to recognize that topic, and to do something about it and have that conversation so that people can speak out, alleviate, and be able to move on and be able to have that life of love.
We're talking to that ED guy, Ven Virah, here on the Questions Experience podcast. Now, Ven, your story is actually heartbreaking because you were never able to get it up even as a teenager. Tell us the horror story.
Oh, okay. So, I used to be involved with student council. I used to organize all these big parties, was surrounded by beautiful women. And in fact, every time I'd meet a girl and things would lead up to something bigger, I would always break up that relationship because I didn't want her to find out what was going on in my life, and I didn't want her to find out about the erectile dysfunction. And often what that did is it made me look like I was a player when in fact I wasn't. I was in love. I had emotions for this this woman, and I had to break it up. So it was a series of heartbreak, one after the other, when in fact what people were seeing was a guy that seemed as a player. And then unfortunately a number of these women were likely thinking, like, what happened? Like, why didn't this work? Like, why is Ven not interested? And the reality is I was interested, but I just didn't want her to find out about my deep, dark secret.
And so that's like the classic double life you were living. Mm-hmm. And it got to a point where because I've watched your TED Talk about this, mm-hmm. and we'll create a link for you as you're watching this to the TED Talk.
Yeah.
You got to a point of pretty serious despair. I just don't understand why you didn't go to a doctor to talk about this till you were 27 years old.
It's easier said than done. And the reality is, as men, we don't really talk about our emotions. We don't really talk about what we're facing on the inside. It's easy to show what's on the outside and what we're facing, and like really showing that we're men and whatever's stereotypical to what society expects of men to be, and to have our manhood, and really portray that to our friends, to our family, to girls that we meet, and whoever we choose as a partner. But we don't really have that platform to really share our feelings, our emotions. And as a result, growing up, when guys were around in a circle talking about their sex life, talking about, what they're up to, I had to lie. I had to show that I also was someone that had a sexual life that was active, and really feel like I was part of that conversation. But to be able not to do that and actually share the truth was something that I didn't feel I was able to do. There's also something else, as you can see, I'm, of South Asian descent, and in our culture, we don't really talk about these type of topics. It's very taboo, and to think that I would have that support in my community was not something that I felt. So I really felt that I want to be an advocate for that. I want to show that, hey, you know what, no matter where you're from, no matter what, society you're part of or what you're facing, there is a voice that you can share. There is a story that you can share, and people are here listening and caring, and this is something that is normal, and the studies are out there showing how this is important. But back then, it took me a lot of courage to be able to face my situation and say, you know what? It's time for me to take action. It's time for me to speak to a doctor. And I remember I was at this personal development program over a weekend, and I really discovered how that was something that was running the show in the background. It was subconscious. All the decisions in my life were made in a way to protect me from, this erectile dysfunction so that people wouldn't find out. But the reality was I was living with it. I wasn't facing it. And there was something that I had to do about it. So I remember sharing that for the first time with my cousin, and I was crying, and I was this 27-year-old boy, and I finally decided to say, you know what? I need to do something about it. Went to see a doctor. And here's the thing. People don't know, but the first time I went to see a doctor, he actually laughed about it. He actually laughed about it.
What?
Because I was sharing my emotion, and it was more like I was less factual and more emotional, talking to a man and a professional, and I didn't have the courage to go back to the doctor. So the reality is I actually went to the doctor when I was 24, and then that happened, and I was so ashamed that I went back and I didn't face the next steps or do what was needed. And then after that personal development program, I went back again, saw that same doctor, similar reaction, but I looked at him straight in the eye and said, I have a problem and I need to do something about it. There's an issue at hand and I need to do something about it. And then he referred me to a specialist who was such an understanding man, and he really took me under his wing. He saw what I had, and he wanted me to be part of his research. And this is where it gets really interesting, Randy, because whatever was covered by the government, he took care. We took care of, and whatever wasn't, he took care of as part of his research. And I remember I was at an auditorium, and I had girls and guys that were my age that were studying, and I was there naked and with my thing exposed to all these students, and they were looking and they were taking notes and they were listening to their doctor, teacher sharing different things about my condition, and they were trying to understand that from a real life experience to be able to to go about their studies.
So you this is where it gets a little bit comical. Like you had little Ven out there laid out on a table.
Little Ven was out
and they're looking at it from every different angle.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, imagine, it was crazy, and those were girls my age, guys my age, just looking at little Ven and big Ven and trying to make sense of all of this. Looking back now, it was like, wow, did I really live that experience? But I did, and you know what? So was life, and so it is. And
we got to hear how things turned out, so to speak, if everything worked out. So let's just review. So you're like, as a teenager, you had a sports injury or something,
Correct,
but you never realized that there's a physical damage that caused you to not be able to have an erection, no matter like mental or performance anxiety aside.
Yeah.
It was just a physically impossible thing. So I take it they took you through various tests and tried different drugs and so on and so forth, and finally determined that you needed surgery?
Correct, yeah. So we did over a series of several months to a year, we did different treatments, and we looked at different ways to be able to cure this. And the doctor came up to me and he said, Ven, we have to do the surgery. That's the last recourse, but we have to do the surgery. And at that time, nobody knew about my condition, like my family, my friends, nobody knew about this. And here I was going to the doctors to do the procedure, the surgery. And to my luck, there was an emergency procedure that same night. So the doctor couldn't do my surgery and said we'd have to reschedule in 2 months. So in that 2 months, I got the courage and I said, you know what? I have to tell my family. I have to tell my friends. I can't go through this on my own.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was the first time I faced my family, and I started with my eldest sister because, surprisingly, I don't know why I chose my eldest sister. She was the one I didn't have the best relationship with, but I'm like, if I need to speak to someone first, let me go to my eldest sister. And I was there. I met her for coffee during her lunch break, and I told her the story, and I was crying, and it was so beautiful to have the support of my older sister. We put aside our hard feelings, and we were there for each other, and she really, really understood me and gave me the courage to be able to, share this with my younger sister, my parents. And then I recalled sharing this with my best friends, and they were like, "Oh my God, Ven, this totally makes sense because you were always surrounded by, beautiful women, but yet I could never see you close a deal or have a girlfriend, and now I can see what was going on in the background." So this is
like I mean, people face all kinds of challenges, but as a as a young man, I can't even imagine like going like through 17, 18, 19, 20 all the way to 27, and I mean, it makes me think of the movie The 40-Year-Old Virgin. And that's a comedy as well.
Yeah.
But, wow. So finally you had the surgery, then what happened? I guess you wake up from the surgery, it's like it's like a surgery to cure your blindness. It's like where you like,
Yeah.
is this thing working right now, or like what? Tell me about that.
So, I had anesthesia. I went to sleep, and then when I woke up, I actually didn't know I had gone to sleep, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the operation. They're like, we're already done.
Oh,
and I'm
wow.
like, wow, okay, this wasn't painful, obviously, because I was under, anesthesia. But then a few weeks went by, and then the doctor and I met again, and then he looked at little Ven, and he was like, Ven, I've never seen a penis cure so fast and be able to heal so well. Like you're good, you're ready to go out there and enjoy your life. And I was like, oh my goodness, like
you got the green light,
yeah,
the ultimate green light.
I got the green light to go out there, enjoy my life. And what a coincidence that I was speaking at an event, and this girl, was super interested by this guy that was on stage, that was vibrant, full of energy. Next thing you know, she invites me over. Next thing you know, little Ven is trying to get into action, and lo and behold, it didn't work. And then we met again, and we tried again. It didn't work, and I'm like, wow, this girl's so beautiful. I can't believe it's not working. What's going on? The doctor gave me a second chance to life, and it's not working. The third time, it didn't work, and then I met with the doctor, and I'm like, doctor, you said it was going to work. What's going on? I had a second chance to life. I thought that like everything was okay, and no, it was not. And then he said, Randy, he said to me, Ven, we fixed the physical issue, but now it's time for you to fix the mental issue. You have 10 years of trauma, and I'll refer you to a psychologist, and you'll need to go through therapy and go ahead and do your work to be able to fix that. So,
wow.
So I was like this young kid saying, I went through a physical operation. I went through so much hardships to be able to try to get it up, and it didn't work. And now he's telling me to do therapy. I'm a guy, like we don't talk about our emotions. We don't talk about our feelings. And here I am having to go to therapy. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do this. But then Randy, 2 days later, I was at a therapy session in front of the psychologist, who happened to look a little like my age or slightly older. And I see this Kleenex box, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to cry.
I have to ask you, male or female psychologist?
Female,
Goodness.
yeah. And we're there talking about sex, penis, my whole life, and what this erectile dysfunction meant for me. And the beautiful thing, this went on for many months, and we would meet every week for an hour, and we'd talk, and we spoke about sexual education, we spoke about my penis, little Ven, we spoke about my life, my family, my friends. And what I realized the more I spoke about this was that the erectile dysfunction wasn't just a physical thing, wasn't just a mental thing. It was about my entire life, physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual. So all of it, everything that comprised of Big Ven, Little Ven had something to do with this. So it was a very good experience for me to go through so many therapy sessions, and the more I shared, the more I healed. And that really was what led me to a second chance to life, because at one point my therapist looked at me and she said, Ven, you're ready to go out there to find someone intimate and get little Ven in action and enjoy this second chance to life. So
the more you shared, the harder it got.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'm sorry.
No, it's
the
okay to laugh about it.
Comedian in me is coming out.
It's okay to talk about it.
We got to laugh about this.
No hard feelings.
I get it. Like I think every man, like it might be 1 in 4 under 40, has had some kind of issue with erectile dysfunction. I know for myself. I mean, as a younger man, there was times where it wouldn't happen, and oftentimes it was maybe with the first time with someone or whatever, and I just chalked it up to like performance anxiety. In some of those cases, though, it's like sometimes the woman doesn't really handle it that well, and then you're really crushed.
Yeah.
And as you know, once it's not working, it's hard to bring it back. Now this is so amazing to be sitting here chatting with Ven Virah, who's now known as That ED Guy, thatedguy.com, and we're having fun with it,
yeah,
and yet it's such a serious issue. You talk about your doctor saying, hey, we fixed the physical part. Now you've got 10 years of trauma, like PTSD over being, all of that came around with not being able to function sexually. And this, I think, is the last taboo. I mean, there's obviously millions of guys out there that are dealing with it. There's another aspect to it that I want to get to. But just before we do, we can't leave people hanging, so to speak. How are you now? Like, what's happened? Finish the story about,
Sure.
Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, Randy, this is great. So there's a lot to uncover with this issue, but essentially, I decided, so my therapist said, it's okay, you can go out there, you're ready to go. And I was so scared because I already had a situation where it didn't work after the surgery. So I'm like, I want to meet women, but I'm a known guy in Montreal. What do I do? How do I go about doing this without, feeling crushed again and having my emotions shattered? And she said, why don't you go on online dating? Why don't you try one of those online dating sites? And we determined eHarmony was best for me because it's not a search engine, or it wasn't back then, and it's just they give you matches every day. And why don't you wake up at 6 a.m, and if you see someone or you then just delete them and they'll never know. So we did that. Signed up on January 3rd. January 4th, I get my matches. January 11th, I'm going on my first date. Several years later, I get engaged and married to this woman. And obviously through this whole process, little Ven was in action, and everything worked. And that was the rise of this erectile dysfunction to that second chance to life. So,
so your first woman that you successfully had a sexual relationship with, you got married to her.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. That was my first, and but the beauty in all of that was that I was able to rise up physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and do it in an intimate way with someone who really was there for me to be able to go through this experience. And little Ven is hitting home runs. So So I'm happy that I was able to overcome that. But I also recognize the reason why this is important for me to talk about, Randy, is because I recognize the 10 years of trauma, the darkness, the fact that I felt alone in that. And one thing, Randy, is the first thought I had as a teenager growing up is God's going to take care of it. And, but then if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, even though you think God's going to take care of it, you got to take action. Right. You got to be the one to be able to go out there and find your solutions and really honor that for your growth and your be able to move on with that issue and be able to face that issue and grow from that issue. The other thing is, I thought that the only solution that was viable for me in that space of mind, in that darkness, was that one day I would leave my family, my friends, and go with my shame on the other side of the planet and start my life on my own. And looking back, I mean, I would be so shattered if I had done that. And I'm so happy I didn't do that I actually faced my condition, faced my situation, and was able to overcome that and not go with the choice of moving away and living on my own and being with my shame and my guilt. And that's why it's so important for me to be that ED guy and to talk about this, because I know a lot of men are out there. We spoke about 1 in 4 under 40. There's also a Harvard study that says that 300 million men around the world are going to be facing that issue from now to 2025. And I think the number is even higher. There's no way to prove that because a lot of men don't talk about it. I think I read something out there. I read something out there that said 9 men out of 10 that are facing this issue don't talk about it. I think the number is higher, but it shows to you how much this is a taboo topic, that men are not discussing about it or are slowly starting to discuss about it. And if you look at the pharmaceutical industry, they're making a lot of money from ED treatments and medication, Viagra, Cialis, and all these other treatments that are out there. So what does that tell you about the fact that this is an issue, that there is a lot of men facing that issue? And why are people not talking about it? Why are people not normalizing this so that we can feel that this is something that is out there that we can do something about? And I think as much as it is a physical issue, it's equally or even more so a mental issue that people need to take what's on the inside, what they're feeling, and expressing it on the outside. And as that ED guy, that is what I want to accomplish.
Well, it's an opportunity, obviously,
Yeah.
when you face a challenge, and you obviously, because of the extreme nature of your story and how much of a challenge it was for you, it helps for you to be able to, for people to be able to relate.
Correct,
Maybe
yeah.
I'm having a bit of a problem with it, or I'm seriously challenged by it, and to hear your story and to hear how you got through it, and to know that there's someone out there that you can talk to about it. It's fantastic what you're doing, Ven. And I know it wasn't easy for you to make this decision to become that ED guy. It's like you're director in a corporate world. You're doing your public speaking this wasn't the topic of your public speaking.
No, it wasn't.
And now you've decided, okay, I'm going to go out there, and this is going to be my purpose and my mission. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. And the reality is I was that corporate guy. I was this motivational speaker, inspiring people, making them laugh, making them feel inspired, making them feel empowered and uplifted. And I realized that, the mess isn't my message, and the message I need to talk about is what I face, which is this erectile dysfunction. And I feel honored and privileged that I have gifts that are allowing me to be able to spread this message and be an advocate for a lot of men out there and a lot of women out there that are with men that are facing that issue. And it's not just about erectile dysfunction, it's about overcoming shame. So that is something, so whatever people are facing, it's an honor and a privilege to be in this lifetime, to be able to be an advocate for this cause. Now, I recognize that, I have the gift of speaking. I'm an inspirational speaker. I have this corporate background, which makes me understand things from a different perspective. I also feel that, that I'm also a minority, and I know how much people don't talk about such topics in those circles, and it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's something that I want to do, to be able to spread that message, to spread that cause, that it's okay to talk about erectile dysfunction. It's okay to have some chuckles and laugh about it, and to be able to normalize this and normalize not just erectile dysfunction, but the importance to overcome shame. And if people can take their vibration from shame and guilt to something of love and happiness and joy, then I'd be happy to do that. And if I can share this story and it changes the life of one person, then I've made a difference.
Well, that's fantastic, Ven. And just before we wrap up, I want to talk and share with our Questions Experience podcast audience about your getting involved with the Questions Experience, which we're very, very excited about. Just before we do, I just want to touch on one other aspect of this erectile dysfunction discussion, and that is pornography, and how there are many men, and I've learned about this I've seen a couple of podcasts, and some men are talking about this, men in their 30s and 40s who kind of grew up on porn as even prepubescent or as teenagers. They were exposed to so much porn, and today it's so pervasive that men they don't have a kind of what you might call a normal experience with normal sexuality, and it's messing them up, and it's creating erectile dysfunction. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And Randy, speaking to men of my age, that is definitely an issue. And the other thing is, I'm always cautious about saying it's just my erectile dysfunction was just because of a physical injury, of a sports injury. Because the reality is, even as a man, with my vision of what porn was and what the reality is with sex, with women, I do feel that was part of the combination that led to that erectile dysfunction. So I do feel it's important to talk about it. I know a lot of men are facing that issue from conversations I've had. And because I came out as that ED guy, men have come and approached me to tell me that they are also facing that issue. And it's not just men that are in my circle, it's men from all age groups, from all around the world. And I'm getting messages every day on social media from men that have seen my TED Talk that have said, Ven, I'm so happy you had the courage to come out there and share this story, because I've related so much to this, and I feel that this is something that I face, whether it was porn related or so on. But it is an issue. It is definitely an issue. And the more porn is becoming pervasive on the World Wide Web, the more men are watching this, the more it's becoming an issue in having challenges in having sexual intercourse with women or other men because of their vision of what sex should be. So it's important to talk about this, because erectile dysfunction, a big dysfunction about the erectile, is because of their notion of what sex is and what sex isn't. And I'm happy you brought that up, Randy, because I do feel it is an issue, and not just with young conversations with younger men, but I've spoken to parents who have revealed to me that their child is facing, or they're concerned about their children facing that issue as they're teenagers and young adults, and because they're not able to feel empowered and joyful in their relationship because of the hardships that they're facing because of their past or present with pornography.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Well, Ven, I really want to thank you again for. I mean, this is kind of this actual questions experience podcast. Other than your TED Talks from a while back, which you haven't really promoted it that much.
No.
This is really your coming out party, so to speak. And
Correct, yeah.
I'm so grateful that you decided to do it to launch the Questions Experience podcast. And just before we let you go, could you briefly share with our Questions Experience audience your own experience with the Questions Experience and why you've decided to become a Questions Experience practitioner and help us take the questions out around the world?
100%, Randy. So one of the things I realized was I got the fortune of reading The Dirty Words, which is an amazing book, by the way. It's filled with, it's light. It's a light read. I don't read a lot of books, or I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but when I read The Dirty Words, it was such an easy read. It was light. The stories were funny, and it was very relatable. And I recognize how there are several small words, and if I tweak them or I change them to different type of words, I can create a different path in my destiny. So I was very intrigued by The Dirty Words, and then I decided to do the DIY kit, and I answered those questions. I went through the coaching, and it was very revealing in terms of what were my how I felt facing my accomplishments, how I felt facing my disappointments, and it really switched something within me and gave me the power to be able to say, you know what, it's time to take action, it's time to become that ED guy, and it's time to be able to make a difference in the world and enable myself to be that change maker for the world. And that's how powerful the Questions Experience is. And it's an honor to be able to be a practitioner for that, to be able to use that platform to go out there and make a difference in people's lives in whatever they're facing, and to help them find their own answers to whatever they would like in their own life, so that they can go from where they're at to where they want to be.
Wow, Ven Virah, thank you so much for that amazing testimonial for what we're doing with the Questions Experience. I'm so thrilled to welcome you on board here with the Questions Experience, and thank you so much for sharing everything you shared in this interview. More to come with That ED Guy. Go to thatedguy.com. Join us on the Questions Experience website, and we'll see you very soon again on the next Questions Experience podcast.